Good news for Joe Biden. Enthusiastic Americans have shown up to greet the Commander-in-Chief. This is truly the summer of Biden. Such enthusiastic crowds, loving Biden. Biden, loved by all Americans as reported by the mainstream news media. Every American worships the ground that Joe Biden walks on. Well, and the Associated Press is working overtime to protect Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi. I didn't know that it was their job to protect her reputation and her statements and her policies 24 hours a day. AP fact check. No, Pelosi is not out to arrest mask refusers. A member of the House Republican leadership is spreading a false accusation that House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is out to get people arrested if they refuse to wear a mask inside the premises. The force's guidance posted in the tweet said members of Congress and staff members accompanying them should not be arrested for failing to comply. Why would there be specific exceptions for members of Congress and the staff members accompanying them? Why would we need an exception to the policy? Only if they refuse to leave would they be subject to arrest, and that would be for unlawful entry. So when they say, no, Nancy Pelosi is innocent. Hey, Associated Press, while we're punishing people who don't wear masks around the House of Representatives in Washington, D.C., what about these Texas legislators who fled their responsibilities in the state of Texas, flew to Washington, D.C., and then were feted and greeted by every single Democrat in Washington, D.C., in the House of Representatives, and in the Senate? You'd almost think, oh, look at that, no social distancing there at all. You'd almost think there were two sets of rules and laws for Americans. Again, no social distancing, and no mass or social distancing at all here on this private flight. So we're in the summer of Biden, and I thought I would go back down memory lane and consider what happened when we used to have a conservative news media. You'd actually have to go back to the 1980s. I would go out of my high school at the end of classes, go to the public library behind the high school, and they'd have a magazine reading room in there. This is when they had those bulky binders they would lock around magazines when people actually wanted to read magazines. And they would always have the issue of National Review locked up in that sturdy binder, and I would read the musings of William F. Buckley and his staff at National Review, and I was always struck by the fact that everyone in the magazine seemed smarter than me. Their topics were smarter than I was. They could quote Latin and French, and I had no idea half the time what they were talking about. But they would have obituaries of famous figures, and they'd have book reviews, and they'd review music and art. And I would read these things and try to better myself, because if I was reading a magazine that was smarter than me, I felt like it was time well worth spent. So I happened across this magazine by chance at the Books A Million store. It's a small little book. It's about the size of a poetry book. You go to Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, someone like that. Go to the newsstand, look for the poetry section where they have quarterly reviews, these little small magazines, just a little bit larger than a paperback book. And you'll find the new Criterion. Now, this magazine is ostensibly a journal about the importance of sculpture and artwork in general. But when you start reading it, you find a lot of those figures that you missed from the old National Review, like J. Nordlinger and some other conservative thinkers. They are featured in this magazine. This is a magazine that celebrates art, Western culture, and Western civilization. So if you want to know in the summer of Biden where you can read true conservative ideas, and read about people who are smarter than you and who talk about loftier things than you do in your everyday life, pick up an issue of the new Criterion. And we need every scrap of culture we can get with the inmates running the asylum in 2021. Thank you.